The first thing you need to know when you're learning about personal training is the jargon and the terms. I want you to be able to understand what it is you're being asked to do. The first thing I want to go over is a rep. A lot of times a plan will say 8 reps or 15 reps, or it might even give you a range, 12 to 20 reps. That's short for repetition. That means each individual time you do that move is 1 rep. So for squats, for example, if it says 8 to 20 reps, you're going to be doing 8 to 20 squats. Each time you do the move, a push-up, a jumping jack, whatever it is, that is 1 and 1 rep. So you'll do it for however many reps or times that they ask you to do it, and that is that. Now that you know what a rep or repetition is, now let's move on to a set. Generally what happens is they'll have you do a certain number of reps, and that equals a set. So your 15 to 20 squats, your 15 to 20 reps equals 1 set of squats. So a lot of times if you're looking at like a printout of a workout routine, it might say 8 to 15 reps times 3 to 4 sets. So you're doing 8 to 15 squats 3 to 4 times. Does that make sense? Reps are each individual time. Set is that group of reps all put together in 1 set. Now let's talk about the different ways that you put all of this together. There are a lot of different methods. Some of the most popular right now are HIIT interval training or Tabata training or some type of time-based method where you're moving from one exercise to another quickly with little rest. So for an example, a high intensity interval training workout, HIIT for short, H-I-I-T, that's what that stands for, is a certain amount of time where you're working really hard. You're doing your reps. Then the timer buzzes and you take a quick break, just enough to catch your breath and be ready to do it again. Then you go into the next exercise for however long is on your timer, and you finish your reps, and then you take a quick break. That's high intensity interval, and you'd go through all of your exercises or through all of the amount of time on your cycle. And that, my friends, is high intensity interval training. It's timer based, a lot of high work, short break, move from exercise to exercise to exercise until you're done with the cycle. Another method is not to use a timer, but to count your reps. So you would be doing those 8 to 15 or 12 to 20 or whatever your trainer suggests or whatever is on your program. You're not looking at the clock, but you're counting reps or the number of times you do each exercise. And when you're done with that one, you move on to the next one. And when you're done with that one, you move on to the next one. And you're trying to move quickly from exercise to exercise. This is circuit training, where you're going, think of the gym as a circuit or a loop, and you're going from one exercise to another, to another, to another. Very little rest in between. You want to keep moving. This is a great way to work on your endurance and your cardio while you're doing your strength training exercise. It's also a great way to get a full body workout because you do an upper body move and then you do a lower body move and then you do an upper body move and then you do a lower body move. And maybe you do a core move or a cardio or whatever, but you keep moving and you don't really need too much rest because while your legs are resting, your arms are working. And while your legs are working, your arms are resting, and vice versa. Circuit training, very effective. Okay, so if you really want to isolate specific body parts and you're exercising or strength training more than 3 days a week, you want to move beyond the full body circuit into a split circuit. And this is where you split your body. The most popular is upper body, lower body. So one day you do all upper body exercises and the next day you do all lower body exercises so that you can strength train 2 days in a row without maxing out or fatiguing the same muscles 2 days in a row. But you can still do your circuit training. You could move, if you're doing upper body, you could move from shoulders to biceps to triceps to back to chest. and then go through it again. You can still go from exercise to exercise and move through quickly with very little rest if you're split training, especially if you're still beginner to intermediate level and you're not ready for super intense bodybuilding stuff yet. Supersets are when you fatigue the same set of muscles with 2 exercises in a row. This is popular if you're doing split training. So if you're doing an all lower body day, leg day, you're doing all lower body exercises, you might do 2 exercises in a row that target the glutes. And then you might do 2 in a row that target the hamstrings. And then you might do 2 in a row that target the calves or something like that. So supersets. There's a lot of different ways to do this too. The most popular is the first one is a heavy strength training, weighted squats, goblet squats, something like that, deadlift, followed by a quick power move that targets the same muscles, something explosive, jump squats, something to that effect. But you can do 2 strength exercises in a row. You could even do 2 endurance exercises in a row. The bottom line is you're targeting the same muscle 2 times in a row with very little or no rest in between. That's ideal. Go straight from one to the next. Pyramid sets is another term that's used in fitness occasionally that you may not be familiar with, and that is where, think of an actual pyramid. Starts wide, gets smaller at the top. That's exactly what you're doing. You're starting with maybe 12 reps of each, and then 11, and then 10, and then 9, and then 8, and you go smaller and smaller all the way up until you get to the top. So each time through, or each cycle, your number changes. You might start by doing 12 squats, 12 push-ups, 12 jumping jacks, something like that. Next time around, 11 of each. Next time around, 10 of each. So as you keep going, you're going to move through it faster and faster. Then you could pyramid back down. Start at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Pick a number to start with, pick a number to stop with. The most common one to stop with is 1, of course. You want to get to the top, but that is pyramid training. Ladder sets or ladder training is another term. And to me, honestly, it's very similar to pyramid. It's basically climbing up a ladder. This one generally starts at 1 and you climb up to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So where pyramid, you started big and you went small. Ladder, you could do it either way. You could ladder up or you could ladder down. But you're starting with one number and you're going up in reps each set, or you're going down in reps each set. You could also skip numbers. I do this a lot. Ladder like by 2s. Start at 2, then go to 4, then go to 6, then go to 8, then go back down, 6, 4, 2, that type of thing. However makes this more enjoyable and more fun for you. Try not to stress. I know I'm explaining all the jargon to you because I want you to get it, but I don't want you to stress too much about it. I just want you to understand it and then play with it and make it work for you. Lots of different ways to do this. There is no one right way for everybody, okay? All right, my friend, now it's time for the fun stuff. Let's talk about the actual training. Now that you understand most of the terms and the jargon, let's talk about what you do with it. The foundation for training, in my personal opinion, based on experience and knowledge, is stability. You want to start by working on your balance and being able to hold yourself upright, your posture, a little bit of core strength. So you'll see in a lot of my programs, I do a lot of balance training because it is crucial. What's the point of loading yourself up with heavy weights and throwing it around if your body's not stable to support it? And it'll help you prevent falls. If you start to slip, you'll have balance. You'll be like cat-like reflexes, be able to catch yourself. Super important. Most people skip it, but not you. Start with stability training, some balance exercises. Get yourself stable, feel good, feel confident, feel solid and strong, and then we move on. Okay, once you've worked on your balance a little bit and you feel pretty stable, you feel pretty good, the next step is mobility. That is getting bigger range of motion, which is another term that is thrown around in training a lot. It can be abbreviated ROM, range of motion. That means you just want your joints to be able to move as well, as big, and as efficiently as possible. A lot of times, especially like in shoulder, maybe knee, hip, ankle, all of your mobile joints that are supposed to really be able to move, a lot of times they kind of get stuck. And we're just not moving as fluidly or as effectively as we could be. So the second step in your training routine is to work on your mobility. And that may involve a lot of stretching, that may involve massage, that may involve just a lot of like loose, big movements to get things moving and loosened up and ready again for the harder, heavier stuff that will come later. You're building your foundation first with stability and mobility. Let's move on. The third step, I know you're waiting for the good stuff, right? The third step is endurance. And this can mean both your cardio endurance or your heart rate, getting your cardiovascular endurance up, and it can also be your muscle endurance. I think of it as both. I tend to like to work on muscle endurance and cardio endurance at the same time whenever possible to be as effective and efficient as possible. So this is where you're doing probably body weight exercises or modified exercises. You're not adding any extra resistance. You're not trying to build your strength yet. This is where you're doing high reps. You're doing probably that 15 to 20 range. You're just trying to get your body to be able to do it repeatedly, over and over and over. You're training your muscle memory to do it correctly without your muscles fatiguing too early. Before you can build strength, you need to build endurance. All right, now you are ready for some strength training. This is where it gets fun. Your foundation is set. You've been working on your balance and your mobility and your endurance, and now you're ready for some strength training. At this point, you may still be doing body weight exercises, but you may be doing them a little bit more intensely than you had been previously. This is where you do less modifications, you try the full versions, you work on getting bigger motions, deeper in your squats, lower in your push-ups, that sort of thing. You're really trying to max your muscles out earlier. This is where that like 8 to 12, possibly up to 15, but really kind of lower in that 10 to 12 range generally. You want to be tired, fatigued, and you couldn't possibly do 15 to 20 like you had been earlier. Not because you don't want to or because you choose to end early, but because it's challenging enough that you're physically not able to do more than that at this point. That's when you're going to start building some muscular strength. When you are in your strength building phase, you've progressed from endurance into strength and you've increased your intensity and lowered your reps. You may still be doing multiple rounds at this point. So you'd be doing your 8 to 12 reps for however many sets and go through all the exercises, and you may repeat and repeat and repeat. It depends on the program you're following. This is where it gets very varied and individualized. But what I want you to know is you may stay at this phase for a very long time. And this is where you start blending what you did previously in. So some days may be strength days, but some days you go back and do balance and mobility stuff. And some days are endurance days. This is where you're focused on strength building, but you don't forget your other pieces. This is where people generally do like 2 to 3 full body strength training days a week and add in 1 to 2 other days of cardio or stretching and mobility stability work. All right. In this phase of strength building, you may also find that you love this phase and that you're very happy here. You feel good, you like the way you look, you like the strength you're building, but you don't really feel the need to push it any further, and that is perfectly fine. A lot of people get to this point and maintain here. That doesn't mean you get like bored and like stop progressing and stop challenging yourself. but you're happy in this 8 to 12 rep range. You try new exercises once in a while, but you know what works for you. You found a routine that you like. You vary it up enough so that you don't get bored and you don't plateau. But you don't ever have to go higher than this. I just want you to know that. This is a really good, solid, intermediate level that works for a lot of people. So if you're happy here and it's working for you, no pressure to move on. Stay here. All right, if you want to move on, there are a couple more levels. At this point, this is where like figure competitors and bodybuilders and really serious athletes live. This is the advanced stuff, and this is where you take your strength training to a more intense level. However, you can do it. The average person can totally do this. I don't want to scare you off. I just want you to know that you don't have to go here if it doesn't feel right for you, especially if you haven't progressed through the level slowly and stayed at the strength building level for quite a while. Then you move up to this point, and this is where we're heavy lifting. This is where you max out by like 6 reps. You're loading yourself up with heavy weight. You can control it, you can do it, you have good form and good range of motion, and you're solid and you're strong and your movements are quality movements, but you can't do more than 5 or 6. You're totally taxed out and burnt out, and this is heavy muscle building phase. When you are in a heavy muscle building phase and you're taxing your muscles out and burning them as quickly as possible with as heavy a load as possible, you do not do the same body part more than like twice a week. It needs 2 to 3 days to recover. So this is where you are in split training for sure, and you're doing an upper body day or a leg day. It even gets generally more specific at this point. It could be a bis and tris day and a shoulder day and a back and chest day and like a glute and hip day. It gets very specific. Most bodybuilders at this point are doing each body part once per week, and then their like trouble spot or the thing they really want to improve, they might squeeze it in twice a week. But this is very intense, very specific, very focused in on certain body parts each training session. A lot of exercises to burn out that same muscle. Supersets happen here. Fatigue it out, completely exhaust it. So it needs a good 3 to 4 days to recover. That's your hypertrophy or your muscle building phase. You're not just building strength here, you're actually building muscle fiber. All right, finally, we're at the top of our training pyramid. You've laid your foundation, you've built up slowly and gradually, and you want to know what's at the top. All right, at the top is power. Now, there's one thing I want to point out here. I told you could stay at that lower level and never do that muscle building phase. You could skip that and jump to power, but don't tell anybody I told you that, because I don't want you to think you can jump out of order. But on this particular one, if you want to stay in that like 3rd level muscle strength building phase, without doing the heavy, intense bodybuilding muscle strength training, and they're very similar. I don't want to confuse you with more words, but if you want to stay in the heavy-ish range without going super heavy, you can skip that and jump to power. So power is plyometrics. It's fast, quick, explosive moves. It's jump squats. It's high knees. It's anything that is fast and quick and takes a lot of fast like reflexes and reaction time, shuffles and that sort of thing, speed drills. All of that is power, and it is important to do, but not before you've built your foundation. This is where your stability and your mobility are super important. One of the most important things you can do when you are training is to focus on your core. And I don't just mean your abs. Your core is your entire trunk. It's your midsection. It's where all your movement starts from. It's everything except your limbs, basically. It really is your entire trunk. Specifically your back and your abs, because those tend to be the weakest, your lower back. And you want those to be strong to help support your posture and your balance and all of your movements. It makes everything better. So no matter what phase you're at in your training program, make sure you include core strength always. It's super important. It's critical. It starts in that stability phase whenever you're challenging your balance. If you're standing on one leg, if you're like a little wobbly, pull your belly button in, engage your core, and that'll help hold you up and give you more balance and strength. Okay, now what? Like, how do you put that all together into a plan? There's so many different ways. I don't want you to stress about it. One of my favorite is to pick, if we're doing a full body routine, which is what you will most likely be doing, especially in the early stages, pick a move for the upper body. Any part of your upper body you want to work on, pick a move. And then pick a move for your lower body. Anything you want to do. And then pick a move for your core, and maybe throw in a cardio or an endurance move or a balance move. Just pick some exercises and put them together in a circuit. So set your interval timer. Either you're going for time or you could go for reps. Maybe you want to do 15 of each. Go through them and then go through them again and go through them again. Like, it doesn't really have to be super complicated. You want to just make sure your movements are good and you have good form and you're not going to hurt yourself and you're moving as quickly and efficiently as possible. Get in, get out, get it done. Move on. How many sets should you be doing? That's a really good question. It depends on how much time you have. It depends on what level of training you're at. But it really depends on how many exercises you're doing and whether you're doing split routine or a full body routine. Generally, if you're doing a full body routine, you're doing several exercises for upper and lower and some core, maybe some cardio. You're not going to have enough time, generally, or enough energy and stamina to go through that too many times. General rule of thumb is 3 rounds. So you do all your squats, all your push-ups, all your lunges, all your plank, all your whatever. One time through, take a break, take a sip of water, recover, do it again, all the way through, quick break, recover, all the way through again, 3 times total. That's kind of standard. But it depends. A lot of my clients, I only do 2 rounds through because we're doing more exercises. I may do 10 or 12 exercises in one session, and we only have time to go through that twice and still have time to stretch and stuff at the end. So it's completely flexible. It depends on your time and your personality. Do you want to go through it 4 times, or will you get bored after 2? And only you know that. Let's talk a little bit more about cardio. What if you want to include specific cardio-only activities like running, if you want to train for a race or something? I prefer that your strength training does not get pushed aside for your endurance endeavors. Continue to strength train at least twice a week at this point, full body routine. And then your endurance activities can either be on other days when you're not strength training, or if you have the time and the energy, you do your strength training routine first, after a quick warm-up, of course, and then endurance after. One, that's really going to challenge your endurance and be good for your training because you're already a little bit tired. And 2, it's going to make sure that your strength training is not sloppy. If you try to do strength training after you've gone on a long run or something like that, your strength training exercises, your movements are bound to suffer. So if you're trying to do both on one day, strength first, endurance at the end, then stretch and cool down, or ideally do them on separate days if you have the availability to do that in your schedule. Let's talk about your form for a moment. There's a lot of things that trainers are looking for when they are watching their clients move, and they may, say like heels down or shoulders back, or there's different things, different cues they may use to get the client to move slightly better. And generally what it is they're looking at alignment, make sure the body lines up, the joints are in a straight line, and posture. Those are basically the same thing. So think straight line from ear to shoulder to hip to knee to ankle. You want to make sure everything lines up one on top of the other. And looking straight on, you want to make sure everything lines up on top. You don't want your knees in or your feet out. So just think straight lines. Look at yourself in the mirror from the front, from the side, have somebody take a picture. Make sure that your back has that natural, small arch in the back. It's not super exaggerated and you're not hiking your butt out, and it's not tucked under so much so that you lose that small little arch in your lower back. So that's what you're looking for, or that's what trainers are looking for when they're assessing their client's posture. Shoulders are back and down, not rolled forward, not tilted. Neck is not sticking forward, it's back. Hips are straight, not tilted in one direction too much. Knees are lined up, not in or out, right over the ankles, that sort of thing. All right, now what do you do if you notice something's wrong? You've checked your posture and you notice that your shoulders round forward. That generally means whatever is pulled forward or in is activated and tense, and whatever is stretched out is loose. So right now my back would be loose and my chest would be tight. So you want to strengthen the back to pull the shoulders back and stretch the chest. Same thing if you notice your knees turn in. It's generally something on your inner leg, inner thigh or calf is tight and pulling in. Something on the outside of your leg is stretched or weak and needs to be strengthened to pull it back out. So wherever you see something is off, where you see an imbalance in your posture or in how your body moves, look for where it's coming from, stretch what's tight, strengthen what's weak. But remember, your stability and your mobility comes first. You don't want to strengthen muscles that aren't able to move properly. So stretching is crucial. When should you stretch? There's a lot of controversy. Do you stretch before a workout, after, in the middle? There's a lot of different opinions and theories on this one. What I have found that works best is very light moving stretches at the beginning. You're stretching, like you're trying to get your body to move in a full range of motion, big arm circles, but you're moving. So it's gentle moving stretches or dynamic stretching at the beginning of a workout. Then at the end of your workout is when is the best time for your deep, static or still, hold still postures. Your deep 30, 60 seconds in one stretch, trying to get deeper and deeper and deeper as you breathe and as you hold it and as you loosen up a little. It takes time to loosen up, and the best time to do it is at the end of a workout when your muscles are warm and loose and flooded with blood because you've just had a really good, awesome workout. They're like rubber bands and they'll stretch for you. But if you try to stretch them when they're cold, they'll snap. So warm them up first, then stretch. Okay, so now that you know it's okay to modify when you need to, how do you do that? Most often, it's just making the movements smaller. So if it's a squat, you don't go down as low. If it's something on the floor, you can generally put your knees down. Like a push-up, you'd put your knees down and you'd only be pushing part of your body weight and not all of your body weight. However, you can do it to make it smaller or less intense. Of course, if it's using some sort of weight, you would use a lighter weight. There are several different ways to do it, but the bottom line is that you make it less intense, slightly less challenging, more manageable for you. Generally, it's lifting less weight, whether that's your own body weight or an actual weight. It's doing less reps. It's moving a little slower, taking a break in between each time, each rep, that sort of thing. However, you can do it to make it doable, manageable, but still slightly challenging enough to hit the number of reps you're aiming for. All right, what about when you're ready to progress and make it harder? This is where you either add more weight. Obviously, if you're strength training, you go up in weights. If it's something that's body weight, you could add more reps, tire yourself out, move faster, or move slower. If you pause at the hard part, like at the bottom of a squat, lower down really, really slow, boom, and then push yourself up fast, that makes it harder. Same thing with a push-up. If you lower down really slow, pause at the bottom, boom, push yourself up quickly, that makes it harder. Limiting your balance, making your stability harder. So doing a push-up with one leg up, you're on 3 balance points instead of 4. One leg squats instead of 2-legged squats, that sort of thing. This is where the advanced stuff and kind of the fun little different ways that we can tweak and play with exercises and make them more challenging. This is where you can really get creative and go crazy. Have fun, be safe, but have fun. How do you know when it's time to move up, to progress, to go heavier in weights, or to the next level? Generally, you'll know when what you're doing isn't as challenging as it used to be. It seems a little too easy. That's a good sign that it's time to progress. When you can do your set of reps, whatever number, whatever range you're in, when you can do those without fatiguing too much, you don't get that burn, you don't get that little shake, then it's time to move up. If you can do all of your rounds, if you make it through your full workout, basically, and you don't feel like you got a really good workout, you feel like it was a little too easy, that's generally a good sign to progress. However, disclaimer, sometimes less intense, easy workouts are a good thing every once in a while. So that's just an FYI. You don't have to kill yourself every day. But generally, you'll know when it's time. When what you're doing isn't as challenging as it used to be, you know you could push harder, you know you're holding back, try the next level. Try the next heaviest weight. Try the next version of the exercise you're doing. Play with it a little bit and see what you're capable of, because I guarantee you're probably capable of more than you think. How much rest should you be taking either between exercises or between sets or between rounds? This is another very individualized answer, and it depends where you're at and what your workout is, but generally just enough to mentally and physically be ready to do more. So whatever that is for you, anywhere from 10 seconds to a minute, maybe even 2 minutes, depending on the intensity of your workout. You want to be able to catch your breath just enough that you can speak, take a sip of water, shake out whatever's burning and shaking and twitching, and be ready to do it again. If you jump back into your next round without being mentally ready, it's probably not going to go very well. So whatever you need to do to prepare, to like get yourself together, oh, okay, here we go, I'm ready. But don't rest too long, because you'll lose your mojo and your heart rate will come down too much, and then you'll need to warm up all over again. So short, but long enough. Very vague, but I hope it helps. The only time you want to take really long rests in between your exercises is when you are in that muscle building hypertrophy phase, where you're doing super intense, like bodybuilding level exercises, and you're maxing out at 5 to 6 reps, and it's burning, and it takes every ounce of your strength to get through every single set. That's when you need really long rests. You want to completely recover in between each round. So those workouts, that's why you see people in the gym kind of just sitting around in between their sets, because they need to completely recover before going at it again. Probably not necessary for you, but just so you know. How to know when you're pushing too hard. So you want to challenge yourself. You really want to push and go as hard as you can, and maybe even a little bit harder than you think you can. But how do you know when you've gone too far? There's a few reasons. One is if you start getting lightheaded and dizzy. That's not a good sign, and you should have a seat. Tell somebody, just in case you pass out, you want somebody to be keeping an eye on you, and have a seat. Stop what you're doing if you get lightheaded. That's number one. If you get nauseous and you need to go to the bathroom and vomit, that's a sign that you've pushed too hard. Some trainers will tell you that's a good sign. I'm not one of them. I think that's not the way to go. You don't want to have to puke to have a good workout. So that means you're pushing too hard. Other signs are if you can't catch your breath, even after a couple minutes, you're still really, really up there, you've pushed too hard. The other thing is if you don't recover, if you're still sore and exhausted and beat and wiped out and feel like you got hit by a truck 2 to 3 days after your workout, you pushed too hard. you want to push hard, you want it to be effective, you want to maybe feel a little sore so that you get that kind of satisfaction that you did something, but you don't want it to interfere with your life and with your next workout. So those are some signs that you, my friend, have pushed too hard. Now, how much exercise should you be getting in a week? There are so many different opinions and theories on this one too. And some people say 10 minutes a day is enough, and other people say 3 times a week is enough, and some people say you need to do something every day. I fall somewhere in the middle of all of that. Honestly, whatever you can do. If 10 minutes a day is better than what you've been doing, start there. If 3 times a week is better than what you've been doing, start there. If you can manage something every day without burning out and feeling fatigued, then go for it. The general requirements are 120 minutes of exercise per week. So that's like 4 30-minute workouts. That's kind of a broad overview. There are so many variables. It depends on what type of exercise you're doing, how intense it is. If you're doing really intense, like HIIT intervals, where you're getting your heart rate way up to the point where you're like gasping, you can do shorter. Those workouts are more effective and they count. Like a shorter, intense workout counts just as much as a longer, less intense workout. So counter that, if you're doing less intense workouts, like just taking a casual stroll during your lunch break, you need more of that. Those minutes are not quite as efficient as your intense workouts. But the bottom line, my personal preference is at least 4 days a week, because then you're exercising more days than you're not. Like this number is bigger than this number. So 4 days on, 3 days off. Just don't let those 3 days be in a row. You don't want to stop your momentum completely and have to start again. Every other day generally works really well for most people.